Our story begins in the midst of an eclipse. Beneath its serene light, humanity undergoes a drastic transformation as a species. Some witness their skin and flesh turning into grass and wood, resembling tree zombies. Others experience metals overflowing from their bones, akin to victims of a construction accident. These individuals, alongside other mindless humans transformed by an unknown catalyst, roam the lands. Amidst the chaotic spread of this unprecedented crisis, one can't help but wonder if there's still a place of ease and comfort in this horrifying world. Even our protagonist wonders why he has been so leisurely and carefree under these circumstances. It's as if he is not afraid of those monsters called the Darksiders. The answer is simple. He too is transformed, but not in the way most people have. He is transformed into a piece of land in some random woods. He can't even wrap his head around his ridiculous fate. How will he go anywhere if he's currently a stationary mass of dirt and soil? Everyone else retains some human-like properties. It's as if he's the only exception. Our boy kicks one of his feet out in frustration, and the land where a Darksider was walking shoots up. The poor thing, covered in tree matter, trips on the unexpected lump in the ground. This ultimately results in Tree Guy's face getting impaled by the reinforcement iron bars sticking out of another Darksider's back. A burst of black liquid starts leaking out of Tree Guy's forehead. A wound that would have been fatal to normal humans is visible. He looks for someone to blame, and that happens to be Steel Guy. Although unintelligible, you can hear the anger in his mumbling. Our protagonist, essentially the cause of this conflict, quickly washes his hands of all responsibility, blaming the Darksider's bad temper for the quarrel. Transformed or not, it seems like other people cannot detect his existence at all. His perception and state of mind are also degenerating, as if he's starting to become nothing but a piece of land in totality. This kind of transformation can't be any different from a death sentence. Accepting the crappy cards that fate has dealt him, he decides to lie down obediently as a farewell to this apocalyptic world. Not far from where he decides to accept defeat, a lady is running for her life. A cute student with green hair looks flustered as she has been running from monsters for quite a while now. She is starting to doubt if there are even any normal humans around anymore. Her run brings her to the piece of land where our boy is waiting for his death. He sees a sign that life might still be worth living under her skirt. Yes, his state of mind is degenerating bit by bit, but a glimpse of the booty could repair any kind of mental issues. He realizes that there is no use in waiting for death lying down. It's about time to stand again. But he gets too excited and accidentally trips someone above him once again. The cute lady lands face first. It's quite a gnarly fall, too. Our boy cannot move. The girl is fine, but he just feels a revelation come to him like a gospel. That sensation belongs to one of the three great desires that humanity has. His heart is practically bursting with joy. It's the vestige of life. Proof of being alive. It seems like even in his ground form, there are still feelings that could remind him that he is still human. While he is relishing the beauty of human complexities, the girl has to push herself up. Getting banged up out of nowhere is not a pleasant experience. To make matters worse, looming shadows are starting to close in. The metal and wooden Darksiders have finished their bickering to lock in on a mutual living target. They might have fought earlier, but seeing and taking someone completely vulnerable is at the top of their priority list. She knows she cannot outrun them with how close they already are. The only thing that the lady can do is scream as loudly as she can possibly muster. Our boy is finally out of his dreamland. Controlling the land with his authority, he points his fingers downward. The ground beneath the Darksider duo suddenly caves in out of nowhere before they can reach the maiden. He does not like that these monsters are struggling and shouting straight into his body without permission. Closing his hands and manipulating the dirt to close up, he wants to instill a lesson that Darksiders are not allowed to touch normal humans. The ditch that opened to trap the mindless mobs starts crushing them bit by bit, swallowing their bodies a little deeper. There must have been some type of miscalculation. Darksiders that have adapted to their transformations are no joke. These two possess enough strength and tenacity to break out of their burial site. It is a tough struggle that shatters all of our protagonist's fingers. He might not have a sense of pain, but these guys can actually cause him some harm. A Darksider that was taken over by a dead tree. A Darksider that transformed into steel reinforcing bars. The two of them sure are tough cookies. If he wants to subdue them effectively, he needs to move with a little more finesse and prudence. First, he must get the lady to safety. To do that, he makes an artificial downward escalator using a moving land elevation. Once he gets her situated in a much safer spot, he employs some more security measures using the ground above as cover. The lady is dumbfounded. The soil around her is behaving so fluidly like quicksand, but it seems to be actively trying to cover and protect her. It is an absurd thought to think that a patch of land is helping her, but these are absurd times they are living in. Our boy has realized a few things in his current circumstances. The land does not speak and does not need to attract attention. But that does not mean that he has lost his temper as a human. With his Darksider form cropping up, he proudly declares that this will be his territory, for he is the territory. For the first time since turning into land, it seems like the two monsters have noticed his presence. His hostility pushes Steel Guy and Tree Guy to make a move against the land itself. They try to come in with some weak standard punches that do not even appear to be effective at all. Darksiders like these two are indeed the lowest-ranked transformed monsters that have lost their intellect. They do not even have the vaguest idea just how thick and heavy the land can be. A tree trunk stops after making an insignificant dent. The reinforcement bars come close, but even their stronger material is not enough to pierce through. Now they are basically sitting ducks, their primary weapons stuck on the stalwart land. To deal with such idiots, just shifting the weight of the land should be more than enough. Focusing the density of the land in his hands, our boy shatters their weapons and sends them flying due to the excess impact. Their landing pad has already been decided. These two are going back into the grave that has been dug earlier. After landing in the deep ditch, our protagonist does not even give them another chance to force their way out as the ground instantly closes. A few seconds later, it is as if the Darksiders and the fearsome trench on the ground do not even exist. Since he's the land itself, our man thinks that burying the Darksiders actively bringing harm is part of his duty. He did something great today. But the person that he saved, the girl crawling out of his improvised safe zone, should leave this place the first opportunity she gets. No one can detect his existence after all. It is a sad and lonely way of living. He just wants to see that thing that gave him the will to live again. He wants to recall that feeling of being human for a fleeting moment. His daydreaming is interrupted by the lady calling his attention politely. She crawls all the way to where his consciousness is and asks if he is her savior. He cannot believe it. He asks if the girl can see him, if she can feel his vague form. She actually does not. At least she would not describe it as seeing per se. She just seems to be able to feel him. As far as she was concerned, when his presence was near, there was a thick and heavy sense of security in the land and the surrounding. For the first time since turning into a patch of land, he feels seen and heard. He grabs onto her hand as if his biggest fear in the world is losing grip. Our boy does not mince his words at all. He directly asks the young lady to stay here and live atop his body. She reacts the way that a normal person hears such a ridiculous proposal. He introduces himself as Lee Chung-yin. He happened to be passing through these woods when the transformation occurred. As a result, he became the literal piece of land itself. According to what he knew thus far, the world no longer has any safe places since the eclipse happened. The Darksiders have taken over and are attacking normal humans everywhere. But Lee Chung-yin still has his human intellect. He also has the ability to adequately protect the lady. It would be easy for her to get attacked running around alone. She needs someone to ensure her safety from now on. He might have spilled some valid points, but those are just excuses. There is only one important reason why he does not want her to go. It is because she showed Lee Chung-yin a new reason to continue living. He wants her to have a reason to stay too. He pleads for her to remain by his side. He says so much so fast suddenly that it is kind of hard for her to understand everything he just spouted. In a few words, he promises to raise and support her. Now it is much easier to digest his intentions. Her name is Luluo. She can feel the sincerity behind Lee Chung-yin's every word. Moreover, she is going to need a better place to hide from the gruesome Darksiders anyway. He takes that as a yes to his proposal. It's time to go and find her a shelter that would be Darksider-proof. But before that, she notices something that merits some concerns. She feels the sensation in his right hand and asks if something is wrong with it. Even Lee Chung-yin himself has not noticed it yet, but his right hand is starting to shrink and shrivel up. It feels like something is being sucked out of his body, and his hand is showing signs of drainage. He spreads his sensation all throughout his body and detects some bizarre plant spreading its roots under his skin. This menacing purple plant with an unusual growth rate could be a Darksider that he has never seen before. The two attempted to walk in the direction of the mysterious plant, but Lee Chung-yin was starting to bottom out energy-wise. Luluo was deathly worried and asked if he was okay. Of course, he would put up a tough front even though his body felt like it had been emptied out. The culprit must be absorbing his power somehow, and he was positive that they were going in the right direction. She stopped for a moment. An idea popped up in her head, but she was not certain if it would be correct. Without explanation, Luluo stuffed two of her fingers inside his mouth, shutting him up in surprise. It felt heavenly. So heavenly that he thought that this could not be real. Getting a cute girl's fingers stuffed into his mouth was an otherworldly experience, but there was something else to its magic. In just a few seconds, the energy that was drained from his body was recovered. His countenance also appeared to be healthier. The magic did not really come from Luluo's fingers. It came from the fertilizers that she fed him. It was a Hail Mary idea, but it worked. Since he was dying of energy deficiency earlier, there wasn't any time to explain. But he was a student from the nearby agricultural university. She just grabbed whatever supplies she could grab before escaping. She was not expecting them to have use so soon. She actually dropped most of the supplies on the run, but she picked them up on the way back here. Luluo was lugging a large sack of carbamide, something that Li Chengyin was clueless about. He properly thanked her for saving him from the brink of total deprivation. She might just be his fated lucky star. However, the effect of the fertilizer was short-lived. His hand started shriveling up again like an old man's. The problem hasn't been solved yet. They must quickly find the source before it's too late. Based on Li Chengyin's decrepit trembling, it looks like they don't have much time left. After some time, they finally reached the vicinity of the mysterious plant. The two decided to scout the situation behind some foliage first, just to be safe. This little purple plant that's only a few centimeters long was actually capable of absorbing Li Chengyin's essence at such a drastic rate. Luluo had never even seen something like this plant in her university. The scary explanation would be that plants can also transform into darksiders. That theory has a high possibility of being true. But Li Chengyin was supposed to be a whole piece of land, so how can a single stalk thinner than an arm can suck him dry? Maybe it's time to see just how tough it is and what sort of secrets it is hiding. Li Chengyin manipulated the soil around the plant, twisting the landmass around its base. The purple plant let out a toot sound once it noticed that something was up with the ground. Alerted to what was happening, the purple plant immediately uprooted itself, revealing dozens of gruesome spheres riddling its massive and complex root system. Each sphere looked more disgusting than the last, especially in the center area. He assessed that those were probably giant tumors growing along the roots. Moreover, the roots themselves are tough. Even the power of the land was unable to crush them. Luluo identified those things as rhizobium attached to the roots of a leguminous plant. Rhizobium helps the leguminous plant to absorb nitrogen from the atmosphere. It basically has a mutualistic relationship with the plant. That means that even if this thing stopped absorbing nutrients from his body, it would already be self-sufficient. The power of the land is useless against the toughness of the roots. He could not think of anything else in his arsenal that would help. Now that the plant has noticed their presence, all they can do is dodge and weave against those vicious root attacks. Upon revealing more of its root system up to the surface, a few corpses surfaced along with it. It was the tree and iron bar darksiders that Li Chengyi buried earlier. It looked like they were about to become sustenance for the mysterious plant. But that wasn't the case. According to Li Chengyi, there was an aura coming out of the darksiders that normal people couldn't see. That aura flowing out of the corpses steadily traveled toward the plant itself. After feasting on that mysterious power, the signature looks of a darksider fully bloomed where the flower's pistil was supposed to be. Along with its sickeningly oversized rhizobium, the thing has turned into a real transformed monster, a full-on darksider. It eked out another one of those toot sounds before priming one of its roots to attack. The root was sharpened at its tip and was traveling at incredible speeds. Its destination was Luluo's heart. Our soil boy was not going to let that happen, though. He jumped right in front of her, shielding her body with his. It pierced through his stony body, cracking his chest into tiny pieces. It might look bad, but at least the girl was safe. That strong penetrating power is even stronger than those two human darksiders that he buried earlier. Luluo saw how such a deadly natural weapon made a hole in his body and felt helpless. The plant intends to follow the piercing attack with a bludgeoning one using the dense lumps. He screamed at her to escape while she had the chance to do so. When the ball sack finally descended from the heavens, Li Chengyi's quickly crumbled, breaking under the blunt force. Again, it might look bad, but these kinds of external injuries won't kill him. But with how badly outmatched he was, that won't last too long. The only thing that he could do was at least buy the lady some time to make a run for it. He yelled at her for the second time, insisting that this was his own personal matter. If he involves Luluo in this insanity, how can he even talk about protecting her and living together? She felt his genuine sentiments down to her core, but she was still just standing there. He shouted one last time that she should not look down on the attacks of a darksider. His shouts fell on seemingly deaf ears. 4 root attacks were already heading for the motionless young lady. She responded by pulling out vials of green liquid from her agricultural bag and dousing the plant roots with it. The plant monster was surprised and felt the pain creeping up from the doused roots. It unleashed a shrill scream as the roots that were supposed to kill the young lady quickly dried and disintegrated. Although Luluo doesn't know much about darksiders, she knows plants. This one they're facing seems to have a very powerful absorption ability. That's why she decided to bust out a dose of industrial-grade herbicide for the enemy to suck on. This is an original solution that hasn't been diluted, so it's one of the strongest out there. Under the light of the perpetual eclipse, the plant's roots started withering at a rapid rate until everything crumbled and shattered into dust. The diluted herbicide that it absorbed from the roots quickly traveled throughout its whole system, dissipating its once powerful weapons. What was left after that was a single stalk of flower diving right down to the ground. Just a few moments ago, this thing was unleashing some menacing toot sounds, and now it's shivering pathetically. The only explanation was that it had somehow lost its will to fight after one gigantic setback. Lulo has also calmed down now that Toot Toot has surrendered. Yes, she already gave the flower a name. Toot Toot lifted its head and carefully lifted its own fruit as some sort of peace offering. Li Chengxie remained vigilant. This thing in front of them was still a dark sider. Who knows what goes on inside the minds of such creatures? The young lady wasn't 100% sure if it was safe. She might not know about darksiders, but she always likes hanging out with plants. Compared to the transformed humans, Toot Toot's thoughts were easier to understand. The innocent smile on the flower's face was quite a giveaway that didn't mean any harm. To show its surrender even clearer, Toot Toot decided to lower itself into the ground, prostrating an apology for what it did earlier. It seems like Luluo has a good grasp of the situation. After receiving a threat to its life, Toot Toot's manners have become a lot more human-like. Upon closer look at the offerings, Luluo determined that they were not fruits. They are stem tubers. This might mean that Toot Toot transformed into a monster from a potato. While Li Chengyin recovered rapidly, she was busy peeling the offerings, looking for some that weren't affected by the herbicide. Spotting one promising piece, she decided to cut just a tiny portion out. She then proceeded to put the tiny piece into her mouth just to try it, much to Li Chengyin's horror. As she gnawed on the tiny portion, he hurriedly ran to her side, trying to make sure that it was not poisonous. It had a familiar taste, and it was edible. It would be better to cook it first. But other than that, it received Luluo's seal of approval. He was still worried about some fringe poison, though. If she feels the first sign of poisoning, he wouldn't hesitate to pour soil into her stomach to suck the poison out. He was so anxious, even though she did not even swallow. She had one more warning for Toot Toot. The plant would be barred from absorbing the nutrients on the ground so viciously. It can only do so if Li Chengyin consents. With how receptive Toot Toot was acting, this could also be considered a successful taming. He has another question for this greedy plant. He wanted to know what it absorbed from the bodies of those human dark siders. It was a dark-colored substance, so we'll be referring to it as dark element. Fortunately, Toot Toot has some talents too. It plucks a little ball's worth of dark elements out of thin air. Li Chengyin was pleased and immediately reached his hand out to inspect the dark element a little closer. The power from the little ball immediately dissolved and traveled into his body like a lightning bolt. He suddenly started hearing some unfamiliar voices talking all around them coming from above. They were talking about how the sunlight seemed to have changed recently and about an intruder coming in. Toot Toot kept on repeating its catchphrase, but Li Chengyin started to understand its speech pattern. Toot Toot was asking him if the dark element was tasty. It sounds like he can now understand the plants that are growing on his body now, his land. Is this the effect of the dark element? The flower explained that it does. The dark element changes darksiders. It makes them stronger. Speaking of stronger, it looks like we'll just have to see now that an uninvited guest has crept into their position. Another darksider with a body that looks like it's made up of wood in its entirety bursts into the scene. Li Chengyin felt it coming from a mile away. He did not even bother turning around. He got eyes throughout the whole land that he occupied. The poor darksider did not even get the chance to show off before getting impaled by multiple earth spears. Luluo did not notice the enemy making her jump from fright. He told her not to worry since the plants already told him about this darksider in advance. After absorbing the dark element, his control and power over the land have increased exponentially. He only had 3 words for the poor darksider who failed the sneak attack. Rest in peace. Manipulating the soil on the monster's feet, Li Chengyin essentially devoured Wood Guy and left no crumbs. From now on, another darksider has become a permanent fertilizer to the land. As he tightened the grip from the underground, a menacing smoke formation started emerging into the air. He manipulated the loose power into his body. This confirms that the dark element is present inside every darksider. Even if they are killed, the dark element does not disappear right away. This means that continuing to absorb dark element mist will make him inevitably stronger. This way, he and Luluo could have a much better chance of survival. She could finally breathe again. She was just concerned about his well-being. Seeing him in a daze, she thought that Toot Toot attacked him somehow. Speaking of Toot Toot, this thing has some opinions regarding Luluo too. People are supposed to be afraid of darksiders, but she's not. Since the flower was curious about how she could accept the current situation so easily, she tried to explain. It's just because she grew up playing in the soil. She's practically familiar with everything that's on a farm. Toot Toot proposed the idea of sharing dark elements with Li Chengyin so they could coexist. The little flower is already on par with humans in the intelligence department. Maybe it's because it already absorbed plenty of juice from darksiders. Toot Toot doesn't like being touched, though. Chengyin approved the coexistence plan since he also has more control over the nutrients on his ground now. But before that, he needed to know something first. He asked Toot Toot where the tiny ball of dark element came from earlier. It immediately answered that it came from the light, like it was common sense. Under the perpetual shine of the eclipse in the sky, there's plenty of light to go around. The duo was only realizing now that the eclipse had something to do with this mysterious dark element. He immediately instructed Luluo to quickly hide in the shade of a tree, away from light. Thankfully, she had been staying in the shadows while on the run. If this was the case, the transformation of humanity was not just a single occurrence. It was a constant occurrence that's been happening even now. That mysterious eternal eclipse is the key to understanding the apocalypse and the existence of the energy source for the Darksiders' growing strength. Lulo had been getting more and more accustomed to the life of living on top of Li Chengyin. She had been exploring the land itself and the surrounding areas around it. Today, she was excited to bring him into an area where traces of cultivation from before had remained. Li Chengyin was not doing so hot, though. He was still not accustomed to living life as the land itself. Toot Toot has been tagging along with the duo everywhere. The flower has seen soil being washed away, but it's not every day that you see a piece of land moving. Also, he's getting quite irritated that this plant was using him as its ride. Although he got transformed into a decent-sized piece of land, he could only walk around a limited area, any further, and he would get blocked by a mysterious obstruction. If he wants to leave the limited range, he'll have to slowly and manually push his soil out and spread it forward. Those places that he moved through will then get assimilated as a part of him. Lulo has been left in charge of analyzing the surrounding land. The spot they picked today has decent soil quality, safe terrain, and there is an accessible source of water they can tap into. She was determined to make this perimeter into the long-term refuge of the group. Lei Chengyin smiled. The young lady sure knows her stuff. There's no reason to doubt her judgment at all, so he agreed. Suddenly, he started sensing something odd nearby. A speck of pink light has attached itself to Luluo. It was so small, nearly imperceptible. It's a tiny particle of dark element. He gently took the fragment out of her shirt and reminded her that there is not enough protection from the sunlight. Luluo must be cognizant to not stray too far away from him. This is at the core of their agreement after all. Li Chengyin doesn't want to see her transform into a monster like him because of the dark element. She got flustered after hearing that. Luluo does not like it when he refers to himself as a monster. He has always been a human in her eyes. Toot Toot just quietly watched the bizarre human interaction, not understanding the subtext of what the two were saying. You can't expect a leguminous plant to comprehend human emotions. Lulo awkwardly changed the subject and presented the seeds that she thinks should go on the ground first. In her supplies, these are the valuable, fast-growing edible crops. Securing a supply of food is one of the most important things to do to survive after. Planting the seeds could be left for Li Chengyin to take care of. He took the seeds to his hand and started coating them with a moderate amount of dark element. Our boy has been expanding himself, slowly replacing the land under his feet. But before having full control over this land, testing out agriculture on himself would come first. Even though they were just seeds, he could feel their desire to grow and grow in suitable conditions. It was the same as before. Upon absorbing dark elements, he started to understand the thought of plant life. Still, it's unexpected that it would work on seeds too. Moreover, it's still a mystery, but he seems to be able to directly convey his thoughts to Flora too. After bathing the seeds with dark element, they started germinating right in the palm of his hands. Lulo was shocked to see that the growth was so fast. They just planted it a few moments ago, and it's already showing signs of life. Also, Li Chengyin doesn't feel strange at all, so this method should be all good. His theory was that after absorbing a decent amount of dark element, he was able to awaken this innate ability. For experimentation's sake, he used up all of his stored dark element and transformed it into a power that increases plant growth. He did it all intuitively. All of a sudden, Toot Toot was trying to get his attention. He had no idea what was going on. It turned out that the flower just wanted some nurturing touch too. Li Chengyin wasn't completely opposed to the idea of that. But unless Toot Toot completely listens to his orders, the flower could keep on dreaming. There's no such thing as free lunch, and there's also no such thing as free nurturing. It bowed once again. This flower Darksider can really adapt to whatever circumstances it goes through. The first time that Luluo saw Toot Toot, she already felt that this thing could understand human nature. Since the eclipse has brought along the emergence of dark element, Li Chengyin has been on a mission to spread out his land, practice, increase landmass, and absorb dark elements. The power from the dark gives him a constant supply of special energy, a type of energy that can be transformed into positive effects. Through this wonderfully virtuous cycle, Li Chengyin managed to cultivate a successful farmland. This was the most joyful thing that happened to him after his chance encounter with Luluo. He says that to himself, but deep inside, he knew that this was nothing but self-motivation in the middle of an apocalypse. Another idea came to mind. If his land can protect humans, then he'll also be able to have a taste of his previous human life. Deep inside, Li Chengyin just wanted to turn back to a normal human. In this current world of monsters and mutations, maybe a method to turn back time exists. Those are lofty ideas, though. Toot Toot has been tailing him non-stop since they first got introduced. He asked the flower if it doesn't like being together with its own kind. Instead of answering, Toot Toot just alarmed him to the fact that there's a nearby activity coming from humans, real humans, like Lu Luo. Of course, Li Chengyin was shocked. This was big news. But Toot Toot also mentioned that there's a large group of dark element holders in the area, and they are moving. The human activity mentioned was coming from a group of 3 people fleeing through the woods, getting chased by Darksiders. This Darksider is not one I would like to mess with. It has evolved to have several protrusions made of sharp blades all over its body. The humans were starting to experience fatigue. They've been running for their lives for a long time now. But screaming and whining will only lure out even more Darksiders. A dependable-looking guy led the group of 3. He blamed the pink-haired lady, Liu Feng Yuan, for insisting on coming back to find Lu Luo after receiving a distress message. Qing Wen, the dependable guy, was quite insensitive. But he has a point. Glass's nerd boy was starting to slow down. The blade Darksider was already hot in his literal heels and closing in faster and faster. Then he made a mistake. Glasses looked behind him and was frightened by the prospect of getting cut and diced into minced meat. A momentary distraction made the Darksider swing its blade, but it luckily missed Glass Boy's leg by an inch. The first swipe did not land, but the next one might since Glass Boy has tripped and planted his face into the ground. Chungjun the Glass Boy was pretty much done for at that point. His friend couldn't possibly do anything to help him, right? As the blade Darksider lunges forward to do its thing, Chungjun was already saying his prayers as he was certain that this was it. He's really done for. Liu Fengyuan and Qing Wen watched helplessly as their friend was about to knock on heaven's door. But just as the tip of the blade was about to carve up the nerd's face, it stopped. In fact, the Darksider's entire body has been frozen. It turned its head to the side after sensing the one responsible for stopping the blade. Li Chengyin quietly manipulated the land to grab a hold onto the monster's leg. He also overheard the humans mentioning Lu Luo earlier. Maybe they have some sort of connection to the young lady. There's only one way to find out. He needs to save them. Our boy, Li Chengyin, held the blade Darksider by its feet firmly, giving Nerd Boy the opportunity to get back, away from the lethal edge. His comrades were useless as hell. The blade Darksider tried to turn its ugly spider-looking face around to see just who was holding him in place while muttering gibberish. When the monster fails to see who's holding him back within the limitations of human sight, he rotates his head in a full 180 angle like he was in an exorcism movie. Doing so allowed him to spot the embodiment of the land they were standing on, Li Chengyin. The Darksider immediately shifted focus to attack him, using blades with reckless abandon. He saw the attack coming from a mile away, but he did not bother dodging or doing anything fancy to defend against the tip of the weapon. Li Chengyin chose to get some information by observing the monster's behavior instead. By his educated guess, this thing shouldn't have the capability to communicate, for it's the one standing on his body, but not only does it not apologize, it's even attacking him. With a confident smile, Li Chengyin decided that he should teach this Darksider a little lesson. It is only fair since this is his literal home ground. Using just a single thought, he made the ground that the monster was standing on collapse into itself, creating a decent-sized sinkhole. That's one way that Li Chengyin can control his land body. From the human's perspective, the Darksider just rushed in the opposite direction and attacked the empty air only to get caught by a freak accident. At least they were safe, though. Just a second ago, Nerd Boy thought that he was going to die a gruesome death, maimed by Darksider blades, but he was saved by a landslide that came out of nowhere. The pink-haired e-girl, Liu Fengyuan, started sending something odd from afar, so she curiously looked. With lively enthusiasm and excitement, she pointed to the other side of a cliff where smoke was billowing towards the skies. If there's a smoke signal visible from the area they're currently standing on, it should be ignited by survivors from their school. Hell, it might even be Lu Luo herself. So, the trio just found their next stop. Composing themselves, they took another trek towards the smoke. Toot Toot the flower carefully watched them walk off. He turned to the side to see Li Chengyin back from dealing with the monster that threatened the group. He just casually buried the Darksider deep in the ground, never to be seen again. Toot Toot was curious as to why Mr. Landlord was letting Lu Luo get in contact with her own kind, with humans. At the moment, deciding to split nutrients among many people may not be the smartest move. But Li Chengyin was well aware that humans are not solitary creatures. He would know. He was one too just a little bit ago. If there's a choice, humans will wish to form groups and live together. Moreover, it has been some time since the eclipse started and changed the order of things. Isolated in the deep wooded areas, they have no idea what the current state of the outside world is. The information that these people hold regarding what's happening in the grand scheme of things concerns Li Chengyin's group as well. Speaking of groups, Lu Luo has finally reunited with her friends. Toot Toot was just worried at the possibility of these humans trying to fight for their nutrients. If that happens, what do they even do? Not everyone can have a good relationship with each other like Toot Toot and Liu Liu, also known as his tumors. Li Chengyin assured the eccentric flower that there's no need to be afraid, for he won't hesitate when the time comes to take action, no matter who or what the threat might be. E-girl Liu Fengyuan could not take her hands off Lu Luo, hugging her tightly and celebrating the fact that her friend was fine. She was so scared when they lost contact all of a sudden. Lu Luo had to calm the e-girl down, as she's been hugging her for so long and so tightly now. Liu Fengyuan was just glad that Qin Wen and Cheng Jun were willing to come with her to this side of the mountains. If she departed alone, she wouldn't have been able to find her green-haired friend. Qin Wen snidely commented that Lu Luo just managed to stay alive alone due to some kind of miracle. Cheng Jun was just amazed that she managed to build a decent shelter, as if she was planning to hide in this place for a long time. Mr. Buzzkill. Qin Wen asserted that hiding here for a long time just won't do. Just a few minutes ago, they ran into a Darksider and almost got wiped out. He was certain that this land was not safe at all. He wants Lu Luo to follow the group to the civil defense military fortification in the city where there are plenty of resources to go around for every survivor. Without the military fortification protecting the remaining humans, they might as well be free meat to be hunted and killed by the Darksiders. Since they were already on the topic, Lu Luo asked what exactly was happening in the outside world. Hearing that question almost made Qin Wen spiral from the sheer horror of it all. There are monsters everywhere. The Darksiders have taken over. More than half of the human population has suddenly mutated into different forms of monsters. They went wild, attacking normal humans. Chaos has prevailed, and order no longer exists. The majority of the people in the safe settlements don't even dare to go outside after seeing the terror of it all. They can only curl up in the civil defense military fortification, praying for the uncertain arrival of the army. Qin Wen says that, but he's desperately trying to get Lu Luo inside that miserable place, going as far as yanking her arm. They only got this far without losing their lives because of Liu Fengyuan's drone capturing the vacuum zones of the Darksiders. No one in their right mind would have come forward to risk their lives on such a dangerous rescue mission. So, he wants to be the knight in shining armor and get her into what he calls safety. Lu Luo's arm was starting to hurt with just how tight the brute was gripping it, trying to yank her out of her seat. This Qin Wen fella just gives off bad vibes overall. So, Li Chengyin decided to interfere, using the walls of the earthen house to push a bowl over the shelf. The clay bowl hit Qin Wen on his shoulder, shattering into tiny little pieces. The shock and pain loosened the grip on Lu Luo's arm. Liu Fengyuan decided to step up to defend her friend. As far as she knows, Qin Wen wasn't this violent before. He wasn't the type to hurt others out of impatience or anything like that. That made Mr. Buzzkill's wild temper flare even harder. He asserted that he risked his life to come look for Lu Luo, and now this e-girl is scolding him like a child. He added that if she continues being so talkative and hesitant, she will eventually die at the hands of Darksiders. Nerdboy Cheng Jun tried to mediate, jokingly asking his bro if meeting a Darksider just now irritated him so much. For now, the boys will go outside to calm down while the girls pack up and get ready to leave. Our sweet summer child, Lu Luo, was starting to blame herself for Mr. Buzzkill's actions, while Liu Fengyuan was glaring daggers on the brute. Outside, Qin Wen was still fuming for some reason. In his opinion, the girls are just not seeing how dangerous it has become out here. He's also regretting being so impulsive and tagging along in this suicide mission. Cheng Jun tried to stay level-headed and ground, urging Qin Wen not to be so rash. Lu Luo had survived all alone, so she might need some time to accept the reality of the situation. Thinking that the big guy was just hungry, he offered some roasted potato prepared by Lu Luo herself. The trip back home will be even more difficult, so they should at least fill their bellies up with nutrients first. Qin Wen took the potato like it was his rightful property. He commented that this is how it should be in the first place, that he should be getting resources first. This brazen act did not escape the land's watchful eyes. Li Chengyin and Toot Toot quietly watched the dispute from afar. They were still waiting for whatever would happen next. Toot Toot confoundedly asked if this is how humans normally interact with each other. Li Chengyin answered that it wasn't. Human behavior can't be generalized. All Toot Toot knows is that he's seeing an ungrateful and callous thug, a perfect target to steal nutrients from without feeling guilty. Those people are even eating the potato stem pieces that he painstakingly grew right now. Based on the landlord's observation, these people are not potential companions who can stay here and work together. They are friends with Lu Luo, but they specifically came to bring her away with no room for refusal. Now, if they really want to bring Lu Luo away, and she wants to join them, should Li Chengyin appear And stop them? Does he even have the right to interfere with Luluo's decision? Toot Toot was used to just doing what he wanted to do, so he asked if those questions were even important. Being a former human, it's important for Lee Chung-yin. More important than Toot Toot's potatoes. Putting aside the topic of potato stem pieces, the snarky flower has discovered something even more important to share. The three humans came from so far away, but they don't have a hint of dark elements on them. If they were exposed to the outdoors for so long, where in the world did the dark elements go? Lee Chung-yin realized the implication of that statement, and it's a scary one. After the boys finished the potatoes outside, Chung-jun asked Mr. Buzzkill if he was in a better mood now that he had eaten something. In the meantime, Nerd Boy will just check on the girls. Maybe they're already prepared to leave. But Chinwen is one ungrateful son of a gun. Instead of thanking Luluo for the potatoes, he spat them out as if food wasn't running scarce. He emphasized that this was simply the most disgusting potato he'd ever tasted. Chung-jun begged to differ. There were no problems in his potatoes. Maybe the big guy was just having anxiety issues right now. Hearing the word anxiety did not sit well with Chin-wen. He admitted that he's worried for everyone's safety. If not for that, would he be anxious? He closed his fist intensely until veins started popping out. They are in an apocalypse that's filled with monsters at every corner, and he just wants to save everyone. With his face gradually turning to that of a disgustingly ugly Darksider, he angrily asked why his group kept on forcing him to take difficult actions. Inside the earthen house, Liu Fengyuan proudly presented the agricultural drone that she had taken from the School of Animal Science at their university. Remember, people, stealing is all good in the apocalypse. The drone also has an infrared ray function. Using it to bring the group back to the civil defense military fortification shouldn't be a problem. They can just take the path away from Darksider activity. She had been rattling on for a while now, but she noticed that Luluo didn't seem so happy with the idea of getting out of the woods. So, she decided to ask her friend what exactly she was worrying about. What in the world could make her so hesitant to get back into civilization? Luluo smiled awkwardly, not knowing exactly how she should answer. Previously, Lee Chung-yin had only said that he hoped to find out the situation in the outside world. But what should Luluo do in this situation when her friend wants her to join the rescue group back in the city? She feared that if she left without saying goodbye to her savior, Lee Chung-yin would be angry at her for being so ungrateful. Chung-jun and Mr. Buzzkill re-entered the earthen house. Nerd Boy asked if Luluo was now mentally prepared to head out. He thought that she was just afraid of running into Darksiders outside. Luluo asserted that that wasn't the case. She considered just telling them the truth about her situation, but she was afraid that Liu Fengyuan and the others would just think that she was crazy. Inside her mind, she was already scrambling frantically. It would be better if Lee Chung-yin just came out and did something to clear up her current predicament. She just wanted Mr. Landlord to tell her what to do. The irritable Chin-wen finally ran out of patience and said that enough was enough. They had wasted enough time already. If Luluo didn't want to leave, then he would gladly tie her up and bring her along forcefully anyway. If they continued wasting even more valuable time here, they'd just be playing with everyone's safety and lives. In his perspective, Luluo's indecisiveness was indicative of her saying that it didn't matter if the trio lived or died. Liu Fengyuan stood up for her friend, asking the big guy if his dull monkey brain had finally snapped and he had gone mad. Chin-wen didn't even have the patience to convince a friend properly. It was like he wasn't even the Ching-wen that she knew. He didn't have any semblance of basis for his wild conjectures, and he just kept on talking about dying every time he opened his mouth. If he was so afraid of death, then he shouldn't have bothered joining the rescue team. Liu Fengyuan was on a roll. Then she asked Mr. Buzzkill if he saw himself as some kind of savior, that without his brilliance, everyone else would perish. Based on the darkening of his expression, it looked like the e-girl hit the nail right on the head. She took over with the decision-making, urging Chung-jun to proceed according to their plan. Miss E-girl would go outside to release the drone while Nerd Boy made sure that the surroundings were safe. Her assertiveness just made glasses agree. Liu Fengyuan turned to Chin-wen one last time, urging him to wake the hell up and not let himself become the burden holding back the group in the end. Unbeknownst to everyone, the darkness inside Mr. Buzzkill's system was already itching to come out. Being forced to confront his fears with a reality check just made it worse. The plan proceeded as they had mapped out. Liu Fengyuan set up her drone to scout the nearby areas from the safety of the skies. They chose a decent clearing as a launching point. The wind force was just right so they could set off any second now. Holding the controller and getting ready to wear the mask monitor, the journey back to the settlement looked like it would be a breeze. Liu Fengyuan optimistically hoped for there to be no Darksiders that were blocking their path back home. Finally, they lifted off. The drone swiftly ascended to the skies to document the safest path that the group could possibly take. Things were going so well until they weren't anymore. A freaking hookshot aimed specifically at the drone launched into the air to crush it into a million pieces, raining down debris on the people below. Liu Fengyuan took off the monitor mask that had turned off. No one saw this coming, so Nerdboy and E-Girl were thoroughly shocked. Turning to the direction that the hookshot came from, they saw the burly figure of Qin Wen coming out of the earthen house with one of his arms extended like a rope. His hands took the form of the hookshot. He kept on repeating that the Darksiders were responsible for this. The hookshot and the long rope quickly flexed back into its arm-length form. Qin Wen deliriously chanted that he was the only one who could save all of them from the Darksiders. They should listen to his orders if they want to be saved. Luluo was still inside the house, and she was the closest one to the madman. She didn't have a clear view of his face, so she wasn't sure if this guy had turned to the dark side completely. The obscure darkness in his face and the glaring light in his eyes pretty much confirmed it. But the odd thing was, Qin Wen had not stopped proclaiming that he was just protecting the group. In his perspective, they were the ones who did not understand. Realizing that this guy was already a lost cause, Luluo tried to run past him out of the doorway with all the speed that she could muster. Out of desperation and fear, she managed to run away pretty far from the partially transformed Darksider to warn the others that Qin Wen had fallen to depravity. Hookshot Boy still had some brain cells left to feel wronged by the fact that his so-called comrades were not listening to a word that he was saying. Luluo was even running away from him like he was a monster. So, like a sane and normal human, he yelled that everyone would die by his hands as he readied his hookshot arm for another round of launch. Before Qin Wen could extend his rope to blast his hookshot off, the earthen house behind him started cracking by itself, caving in out of nowhere. When it finally collapsed in one fell swoop, the heavy chunks of solid rocks dogpiled on top of the hookshot Darksider as Luluo continued running, only turning around to see the destruction behind her. Like always, after seeing something bad happen, Luluo's first thought was to blame herself for everything. Chungjun and Liu Fengyuan were also safe as they were far from the collapse. They were both confused as Qin Wen had never gotten into direct contact with Darksiders. They did not even consider such a wild variable in their escape plan. Miss E-Girl snapped out of her confusion to grab the gobsmacked Luluo from where she was fearfully standing. She was the only one who kept her wits about her. She knew that a Darksider was not like the zombies from movies. Besides, they had no idea how these monsters mutate. She also urged the nerd to start running unless he thought he could fight against a Darksider. From the collapsed house, the sinister hook shot from before forced its way out of the heavy debris, homing in on the fleeing group. Thankfully, Luluo decided to look back in a panic, urging the target of the hook, Liu Fengyuan, to dodge to the side. Miss E-Girl also turned around to see that the sharp metal tip was about to pierce through her body. But before the hook shot even got remotely close to her, a piece of solid land protruded out of nowhere to stop the seemingly unstoppable momentum of the hook. Instead of skewering the E-Girl's lithe body, it was halted by some earth-bending hocus-pocus. Liu Fengyuan looked at the halted tip of metal glistening with the reflection from the sunlight fearfully. Had the earth not decided to intervene, she would have been done. The hook part of the weapon was lodged too tightly on the rock, but there was some trembling happening at the other side of the rope, the spot where the earthen house had collapsed. Using the flexibility of the elastic rope going back to its original length, Qin Wen the Darksider escaped the weight of the debris unscathed. He was still blabbering on about how it was the Darksider's fault that all of this was happening. His other hand balled into a fist as it also started turning into a foreign material, his flesh gaining a different property. Qin Wen kept on going on and on about how the group needed him and that they would not survive without his help. An invisible hand stopped his overgrown fist before it reached the other survivors. Based on the sizes alone, it looked like a massive mismatch, but the invisible hand stood steady. Li Chengyin finally decided to show up at the perfect junction. His body was in the position of the earth wall that stopped the hook shot in the first place. This was his first time witnessing the process of a human mutating into a grotesque Darksider. He must admit that this Qin Wen fella seemed to be a bit special. Mr. Hookshot. Darksider was still cognizant that someone was stopping his attacks. He could feel it, but he could not see the landlord's form. As far as Qin Wen was aware, although the mysterious presence looked like a part of the land, there was a clear consciousness at play. Then why would a non-human stop him? In Qin Wen's deluded brain, he was just doing his best to protect the group, so how was he in the wrong? Li Chengyin curiously asked if this was true. If that's the case, then he and Qin Wen might have something in common. He wanted to know if the former Mr. Buzzkill could still keep his own identity as a human even after mutation. Qin Wen answered that he and the other 3 survivors were fellow students, friends even. Those simple facts would never change. He so desperately wanted to save them, but it was manifesting in a messed up way. He just kept on convincing himself that he could save everyone and that this was the only way to do so. As a mutated creature himself, Li Chengyin's instincts were telling him that the guy was not lying. Or at least he thought that what he was saying and doing was the absolute truth. If that was the case, since he was able to get along with Lu Luo, then why couldn't Qin Wen? There was a possibility that the answer lay in the eyes. The mark of hatred and darkness was apparent in Qin Wen's eyes. The Darksider's other arm finally finished its mutation, taking the form of multiple flexible ropes with a high degree of toughness. They easily tore through Li Chengyin's earthwall body. Those ropes found their way toward the body of poor Chengjun. They did not run when they had the chance to do so. Now the nerd was paying the price. Li Chenyin turned around to see the damage done for not taking the other mutated arm into account with his earth defense. Qin transformation was closing in on 100%. All the human traces on his face were gone and replaced by the monstrous features of a Darksider. He started yapping about how his friends were infected by the dark element and how he must destroy those that were infected to save them once and for all. Nerd guy Chengjun was shocked by the betrayal of his close friend and still couldn't believe that Qin Wen had become his killer. The poor guy died like that, killed by his best friend, who had now turned into a monster. In the next instant, Chengjun's breathless body was already falling to the ground. Liu Fengyuan only managed to shout his name in despair, but it was already useless. Chengjun could no longer hear anything in this life. She only had to regret the decision to stop in this cursed place, but nothing could be changed anymore. Now the girls needed to think about themselves and run away as soon as possible, saving their lives. Even though Chengjun was dead, Darksider Qin Wen was not going to stop. Everything was not enough for him, and he was not going to let his past friends run away and abandon him. In his altered mind, only he could protect them, and if they didn't want that protection, then they shouldn't live. The girls barely made it to the cliff, but it wasn't enough. The Darksider's attack caught up with them, and here, and escaping the blow, they jumped into the unknown. The cliff was too high. There were several dozen meters to the ground. Liu Fengyuan in flight already realized that this was the end, and here they would die. She was beginning to blame herself for putting them all in this situation. After all, she was the one who had initiated the expedition to find Lu Luo, even though it was very dangerous and it was unknown how humans mutated into Darksiders. In the end, she came to the conclusion that it was her fault, and it was because of her that her friends died. So resigned to her near death, she closed her eyes and was ready to trust fate. To her surprise, she didn't feel the hard impact on the ground. Instead, she and Lu Luo hit the slope that had just appeared below them, and rolled down it like a kid's slide. Of course, Liu Fengyuan was too surprised by this turn of events and made the critical mistake of flipping to the other side. Now she was breaking with her face, and already at the bottom, she had to spit out the earth and sand from her mouth. Now her face had the full palette of scratches and bruises. Still, this was many times better than death, and Liu Fengyuan couldn't believe her luck. Looking back, she wondered why the terrain had so suddenly changed right below them. It was still hard for her to understand how she had survived such a fall. Lulo hurriedly hugged her friend and reassuringly asked her if she was all right. However, Liu Fengyuan was not someone who needed to be comforted. The only thing she was interested in right now was what the hell was going on. Lulo was just about to explain to her, even though it would be quite difficult to believe her words. But she was sure that they shouldn't run away from this place. After all, there is our hero Li Chenyin, who will definitely solve all the problems, and he would keep them safe in this world full of dangers. Meanwhile, up above, our hero was just solving the problem with the Darksider. The mutated Qin Wen was quite unhappy with the fact that some piece of land was preventing him from being with his friends and made him miss them. He couldn't wait to continue saving them. Darksider was now going to destroy his enemy, who was preventing him from moving on to saving people. Our hero, of course, thought that such logic looked very dubious. How could you even think that killing your friends would save them? Where is there any sanity in that? Li Chenyin was wrong to think that he could negotiate with him, and that's why Chengjun died. Our hero was too stupid to think that Qin Wen could be like himself and could continue to live the life of a reasonable person after mutation. But in the end, Qin Wen turned out to be just another ordinary dumb Darksider, without a shadow of human consciousness and only with instincts to kill and meaningless muttering. Such an exceptionally harmful monster could now be disposed of without a trace of regrets. Feeling Li Chenyin prepare for battle and activate his power, the Darksider tensed up and was simply shocked by so many dark elements. He immediately rushed into the attack, intending to save them all, whatever meaning he put into those words. Our hero tried to stop his hook attack with his hand. However, this turned out to be a bad idea. The hook simply destroyed his arm and pierced through his body. Li Chenyin was surprised to see such strength of a Darkseer. Is this monster really that strong? After pondering, our hero decided that it wasn't. It was just that he himself had become too weak. And the reason was very simple. In this mountainous area, the soil was too stony with little ground. And now, even though he had moved some of his land here, the amount of ground here was still insufficient, and so the amount of his strength was greatly reduced. While the Darksider was full of strength and energy, he continued his ramblings, sure that only he could save people, and this piece of land was a monster. In a way, our hero even felt sorry for him. Now that he was a common Darksider, he had nowhere to go. Those exposed to the dark sun are tainted by the dark elements, and the only way to save them from suffering is to kill them. After all, once transformed, Darksiders cannot return to normal human society, due to their appearance or aggressive nature and lack of human consciousness. No matter how it sounded, it was only possible for Darksiders to return to the dark side, to similarly mutated beings. That was why Li Chengyin reminded his opponent that he had no place to go and no destination once he went to the dark side. Although our hero was a Darksider himself, he was different from the others because he had kept his mind and consciousness. Now he was determined to show the last mercy to the creature that used to be Qin Wen and bury him to end his suffering. Of course, the monster was against such an act of mercy and was willing to do anything to suffer a little more in this world. He made his hook rotate, turning it into a kind of blender to smash his opponent into pieces. But Li Chengyin didn't sit idle either and prepared his own trick using fast-growing roots. This time the hook was unable to destroy his hands. Even more so, it couldn't even touch them. The roots stopped him safely. Of course, everything had to be paid for. Now our hero had to use plants that lived in symbiosis with him, and he was sorry for the damage he had caused them. However, the main thing now was to deal with the Darksider, and then he would reward them generously for their help. Now enhancing his ground body with roots, Li Chengyin was able to deprive his opponent of his arm without any problems. The Darksider immediately roared in pain and rage, and stood still for a moment to catch his breath. It seemed that he had given up and was about to start running away, but it only seemed so. Soon the rage and hatred that filled him burst out, and he used his other hand to attack. Suddenly, Lulo could be heard shouting behind him as she climbed to the top of the cliff again despite the danger. She brought with her a backpack with a very useful tool, which she hurriedly threw to our hero, and advised him to use it. Li Chengyin turned around just in time to avoid falling victim to the thing himself, and quickly caught it. It was just what he needed. Large and sharp garden shears. They alone would probably be enough, but our hero thought otherwise. Li Chengyin decided to enhance them with the power of the earth and the flexibility of plants, to combine with the sharpness of metal weapons to create an ultimate weapon. Now he had a power in his hands that the wooden Darksider would definitely not be able to handle no matter how hard he tried, and no matter how much he hated it. Now it was time to put this new weapon to the test. The Darksider wasn't going to give up no matter what and went on the attack. Li Chengyin only smiled contentedly at this. This idiot didn't even realize that he had already lost. With one confident move, he destroyed the Darksider's second arm, and only pieces of wood were scattered in different directions. Our hero didn't stop there and went on the attack himself. Now that his opponent didn't have a single hand, he had no problem giving him a crushing blow to the head. Darksider fell helplessly to the ground, his mask of darkness cracked, and due to his lack of arms, he could no longer get up. Neither would Li Chengyin let him. He towered right above the monster, putting a tip to its throat. The dark side had been defeated. Toot Toot immediately appeared from the ground as soon as the danger had passed. He criticized our boy's weapon, calling it insufficiently durable, though quite tough. But among his incisive remarks was the helpful advice to bury the Darksider in the ground to absorb nutrients from it, according to the standard rule of nature. Of course, the Darksider didn't like that prospect very much, and in desperation shouted another load of nonsense. Before burying him underground, Li Chengyin had one last question for him. Why did he become like this? He just shouted once again that he wanted to save people. This made our hero think that perhaps Qinwen became a Darksider, not only because of his exposure to the dark sun. It was because of his constant paranoia that drew him to the dark side. The ground and roots under Li Chengyin began to absorb the monster. The earth would take care of him and become a safe place that would ensure that no one else would be killed by a so-called savior of friends like this one. When everyone finally calmed down and came to their senses, only 2 small mounds of earth remained near the cliff, with Liu Fengyuan looking sadly at them. She wasn't crying, but she was barely holding on. They were her best friends and had died in one fell swoop. Now she only had Luluo left. For her sake, she must be strong. Lulo, seeing her depressed state, wanted to comfort her and distract her from her loss by introducing her to Li Chengyin. But there was one small thing about it, which our hero hurriedly reminded her of. His body was difficult to see, but he had a solution to this problem. All that was left was to find out if Liu Fengyuan could hear him. He himself wanted to ask her if she was offended by him. Li Chengyin himself was well aware that he had screwed up. If not for his indecision, Cheng-jun would still be alive, and Qinwen would have been neutralized faster. If our hero hadn't raised false hopes about Darksiders, he could have handled this situation much better. Surprisingly, Liu Fengyuan replied to him that she didn't think so and didn't blame him for anything. He must be an idiot to come up with something like that. In fact, When she came out of the civilian shelter, she was mentally prepared for such an outcome. Even if the worst thing happened to her, she wouldn't blame anyone else but herself. However, Luluo was not surprised by her words, but by the fact that she could hear Lee Chungyin's words. Therefore, she asked how she could do it. She didn't know the answer to this question, but for some reason, after Chungjun's funeral, she clearly began to feel the presence of another person nearby, even though she couldn't see him. Now, thanks to the image made from the ground, there was some sort of speaking object in front of her. It was more like an abandoned clay doll that had been broken many times and covered in mud. That's roughly what our hero looked like from her perspective. Luluo also revealed an interesting fact about Li Chengyin, that he himself is a sentient Darksider who turned into a piece of land, and he has a friend, a friendly plant Darksider called Toot Toot. Their existence was hard to believe, and other survivors would definitely laugh upon hearing something like this. But now the two of them had seen them with their own eyes and simply couldn't doubt it. Liu Fengyuan was still very sad, and even such an unusual company of two intelligent Darksiders couldn't distract her. Luluo offered her to stay with them and live here, but she was in no hurry to agree. She needed to think and rest, and she was going to announce her decision to them tomorrow. Liu Fengyuan was very tired and asked them to let her stay at their house for one night. As expected, Liu Fengyuan was too shocked by the death of her friends, and Luluo was worried about her. She was sure that she should spend time with her this evening to calm her down. Well, our hero didn't mind the additional company. It's more fun together. The evening passed quickly, and the girls, exhausted from a stressful day, quickly fell asleep. However, something was wrong, and Luluo was shivering. She was sick and had a fever. Outside, our hero, free from the need for sleep, was looking up at the sky and pondering the future. Near him was Toot Toot, who was wondering whether the number of human members had increased permanently or only temporarily. Li Chengyin did not know for sure. Since the dark sun had set, communication had been cut off, and the scouting drone had been destroyed. In such a situation, if Liu Fengyuan is as smart as she says, then she won't leave and go on a risky journey alone. Toot Toot had a poor understanding of human behavior, therefore asked if she knows a place safer to live, so why then did she come here? To him, such actions seemed very unreasonable. The answer was simple: to save her friend. It was proof that she was a very good person, and Li Chengyin wanted to shelter only good people in his land. For Toot Toot, such an explanation did not clarify anything, and he despaired to understand their actions, said that the thoughts, words, and actions of animals are very difficult to understand, unlike plants. The morning of the next day was by no means calm and serene. It began with the screams of Liu Fengyuan, who was asking Luluo what had happened to her. Li Chengyin came running to her screams to find out what was going on, but Liu Fengyuan could not explain anything to him. Luluo had a high fever, but its cause was unknown. It could have been anything: an allergy to an insect bite, a parasitic infection, or even sepsis. Luluo herself thought it was because she was too tired and her immune system had deteriorated. On top of that, she had been desperately fighting for her life for the past few days, and her spirit was too tense. She was sure that she just needed to get some sleep, and everything would pass. Liu Fengyuan was not going to let things go. She was very worried about her friend and was willing to do her best to help her get better. Judging from the symptoms, Luluo needed antibiotics, but unfortunately they didn't have any. To get them, they would have to go back to the civilian shelter and get them there. That place was not far away. It would take less than a day to get there and back, and Liu Fengyuan was willing to immediately set off on this dangerous journey. But in the meantime, Luluo needed to be closely watched and taken care of. She assigned these duties to our hero. When she was about to leave their home, Li Chengyin stopped her. He reminded her that she would not be able to get out of this wilderness safely on her own without the help of a scout drone. If he could go with her, he would definitely protect her. But unfortunately, his range of motion is limited to this piece of land, and when he moves outside of it, it will be too slow. Luluo would simply not be able to last that long. The difficulties and dangers along the way didn't stop Liu Fengyuan. She was willing to take the risk and go on her own. She didn't see the point of living in a world without her friends. That's why she was willing to put absolutely everything on the line to save Luluo. Seeing her determination, our hero decided not to stand aside and help. The very next moment, he tore off his eye. Such a sudden act shocked Liu Fengyuan because she had no idea why he did it. But to be honest, Li Chengyin wasn't even sure what he was doing yet. All he wanted to do was to test his hunches. With all his might, he cast his eye into the sky. Since he didn't know much about his new body, he had to check everything on his own. Strangely enough, his theory was confirmed. The piece of earth separated from his body could indeed continue to have a part of his perception, but it could only last for a short time. Just a few seconds later, his eye had turned into a piece of earth that no longer had anything to do with him. But Toot Toot knew how even this limitation could be overcome. He only needed to infuse the piece of earth with dark energy. Toot Toot himself moved like an animal on the same principle and could separate from the ground by expending dark elements. In this case, our hero wondered how many dark elements it would take to separate a piece of earth from itself for 24 hours and still maintain the same perception during that time. Surely not a small amount. Toot Toot tried to calculate roughly and even, froze in place when he realized how much it would take. But when he looked at the house where Luluo was lying sick, suffering in a fever, Toot Toot dared and asked if one day he would also fall ill. Would they also be willing to spend resources to save him? Li Chengyin assured him that, of course, he would do his best. It would be natural, after all. They are now a symbiotic group together and should take care of each other. Gradually, Toot Toot realized everything and began to accumulate dark elements. His roots had broken free and he was now ready to help his friends. He climbed higher specifically to gather more energy and transmit it. Liu Fengyuan was shocked at such a quick transformation. Before this little flower seemed quite harmless to her. Toot Toot wasted no time and began to fill our hero's land with dark energy that he himself absorbed from the sun and earth. This amount should have been enough for Li Chengyin to be able to separate a piece of earth from his main body and still retain his perception for a full 24 hours. The sound of energy filling his body was similar to the beeping sound of resource production in some game. Li Chengyin was surprised that Toot Toot knew so much, and wondered what other purposes dark energy could be used for. Was Toot Toot really using it to become smarter? But really he was just learning by watching our hero. And now by example, he realized what the concept of groups and friends meant to people. Now he was hurrying Li Chengyin to set off faster without wasting precious time. Toot Toot had invested a lot of energy and didn't want it to go to waste. They had to act quickly. But who knows what obstacles and dangers await them on the way. With the plan to retrieve some medicinal supplies in the CDMF, Liu Fengyuan bravely set off alongside our boy Li Chengyin. The duo's cautious traveling method is insane, to say the least. Fengyuan would toss Chengyin's eye, which was made of soil, up in the air as hard as she could. From up above, the eye would be able to observe the immediate surroundings and the optimal paths to take. His eye even saw some Darksiders roaming on the right side of the trail. All they have to do is take the left path, and they will be able to avoid running into any Darksiders until they properly exit the forest. Chengyin's temporary avatar caught his eye perfectly, and the duo pushed on. While walking, he tossed Fengyuan a question about whether they would be able to really get antibiotics in the base camp. Given how chaotic the current world is, the distribution rights of these precious resources must be in the hands of carefully selected people, right? She assured him that this wouldn't be a problem as her brother, Liu Fengqin, is in charge of medical management. He's a general practice doctor, and if they are lucky, they might even be able to bring him to check on Lu Luo. Fengyuan showed him a photo of her brother. Since they don't know what can happen, perhaps it would be better if Chengyin knew who they were looking for. She could only hope that there were no complications in the CDMF. Before they knew it, the duo had already reached the exit of the forest, with the highway in full display. The two quickly scaled their way to the paved ground. They just need to keep following this road for a few kilometers, and they will reach their destination. Liu Fengyuan was beaming with smiles, thinking that they were out of the woods, literally and metaphorically. But when she turned her head in the direction of the base camp, Fengyuan saw a burning city. She immediately panicked. Why would there be a fire in the direction of the CDMF? Could something catastrophic have happened? Li Chengyin took a little longer to climb up the road. He tried to make her slow down, but she was already frozen in place. While she was busy gazing and thinking about the massive fire in the city, she did not notice a presence lurking nearby. Chengyin tried to warn her to watch out for the opposite side of the highway, but she was too preoccupied. The burning Darksider saw the young lady and immediately pounced with every bit of force it could muster. But instead of getting the surprise jump against the young lady, it seems like the opposite thing happened. Liu Fengyuan turned around on a dime and smacked the burning Darksider straight to the face, neutralizing the monster. Knowing that this mission would be a perilous task, she handily brought a freaking crowbar in case some Darksider tries to go up against her. Li Chengyin was dazed and surprised. It looked like he underestimated Liu Fengyuan's ferociousness quite a bit. She looked down on the Darksider she had just taken down. It looked weak and thin. Its body didn't look indestructible as well. As long as the duo does not meet any tough and strong monsters, she could kill off weaker Darksiders. Fengyuan turned around and saw Chengyin's surprised expression. She immediately noticed that this boy was thinking of him as a weakling and a burden. He hurriedly apologized if it seemed that way. But as a dozen more of these burning Darksiders started climbing up to the highway, her fighting instincts might not be enough to eliminate everyone. She might have been a little too cocky because there's no logical way that a single crowbar could wipe out multiple Darksiders. Fengyuan turned to Chengyin and asked him to quickly use his brainless head made of soil to think of a solution. When she finished her bratty order, she realized that Cheng Yin wasn't even there anymore. Where the hell did our boy go to? Feng Yuan was forced to run for her life as dozens upon dozens of burning monsters chased after her. She's starting to think that the soil bastard sold her off to the Darksiders. But that might not be the case. In the middle of the road, a suspicious blanket of soil was placed, and with it came multiple solid blocks that tripped up the mindless Darksiders. Just one well-timed coordinated attack caused dozens of monsters to tumble their way into a bloody dog pile. That suspicious blanket of soil was none other than Cheng Yin himself. He just took advantage of the fact that these small fry Darksiders do not pay attention to their footing. With the horde of burning monsters helpless on the ground, Cheng Yin sharpened a piece of rack and told Feng Yuan to follow with his next approach. All the killer duo had to do was hit the faces of these Darksiders. They won't be able to stand back up once their masks are broken. With a crowbar and a sharp rock, they slaughtered those helpless monsters. Doing so made it possible for them to sneakily enter the city, trying their best to be stealthy to avoid any unnecessary attention. These Darksiders were not even here when she left, and that's only been a few days. Their features are so distinct and similar that it seems like they all came out from a single fire together. He's starting to worry that if the CDMF, which serves as the previous hideout of survivors, has fallen, will they still be able to find the antibiotics for Luluo? She assured him that there is a privately built safe house within the structure that not many people know about. That spot should still be safe. As long as they haven't confirmed the situation yet, giving up is not an option for Luluo's sake. While going down some stairs, Cheng Yin felt a moment of admiration for Liu Fengyuan. With how composed she is, he reckons that she must be a very strong and successful person in the previous world. That assessment clearly made her a little uncomfortable, as if she felt ashamed. She thinks that her life would have been great if that was truly the case. The two finally reached the floor of CDMF. Thankfully, there were no traces of Darksiders on the floor. Just as Cheng Yin was wondering if the survivors instinctively ran outside because of the fire, he did not notice a hidden presence lurking behind. The hidden presence whacked him in the head with a fire extinguisher. His earth skull was completely shattered with the impact. If he still had brains, it would have already fallen off. This man hiding in the dark corner bears a striking resemblance to the man in Feng Yuan's photo, her brother, Liu Fengqin. Fengqin was about to go for another fire extinguisher slam, but his little sister stopped him. The older brother's first instinct was to make sure that she was all right. Angered, Cheng Yin stood up while holding the shattered pieces of his head. He asserted that Feng Yuan is okay, but he's far from that. Feng Yuan dispelled the tension before it could get any worse. She insisted that Cheng Yin is one of them, one of the good guys. Then she asked her brother what the hell happened in the one day she was out. Fengqin was still skeptical of Cheng Yin's alignment, but he trusted his sister. Meanwhile, our boy was steadily healing his shattered face while thinking about how different the personalities of these two siblings were. Fengqin explained that the CDMF was wrong with their initial assessment that the disaster was caused by a virus. Someone became a burning Darksider inside, and anyone who caught fire from it was also transformed. The doc barely escaped the chaos with a few other people, and he only managed to retrieve a walkie-talkie on him. Those that moved faster took a lot of resources, and some normal people are now stuck behind the isolation gate deeper inside the building. That means all the resources, including the medical supplies they need for Luluo's sickness, have all been gathered in that room. If they want to get those antibiotics, they will need to kill through the underground area of the CDMF first. A place filled with burning Darksiders. Back in the middle of the forest, the makeshift earth home that Cheng Yin made. Lulo was inside and in pain as she struggled with the sickness coursing through her body. Her temperature is not returning to normal, and she's having difficulty breathing. Every time she opens her eyes, she sees a blurred vision mired by what looks like the dark element. She knew that her current condition was becoming a little too serious. She can't just lay down and wait for the inevitable. Luluo was not conscious when Li Chengyin left. She tried to look for him in Toot Toot to no avail. Outside, the eternal eclipse still hung high up in the sky, raining down bits of the dark element into the atmosphere. Toot Toot gazed up and reckoned that today was a sunny day. The consciousness of Li Chengyin's main body got separated to go on that city mission, but the land itself still seems to possess his abilities. It's still receiving and sending the power of the dark element everywhere. Using too many dark elements is not good for Toot Toot. If he doesn't get something in return, he won't volunteer to guard the place next time. Humans call this decision-making intellect, right? While he was lost in thought, the young lady crept up behind him and showered Toot Toot with a viscous green substance. It alarmed and confused the poor flower. It turned out that it was just Luluo dousing him with some nutrient fluid because it looked like the flower really needed some pick-me-up juice. Toot Toot panicked as Luluo is currently sick. According to human experience, she needs to preserve her stamina to fight against inflammation. She shouldn't be walking around outside at all. Lulo assured him that it was all right, as she had just woken up to eat and replenish her energy. She also needed to use the washroom. Besides, Toot Toot also needs to properly absorb nutrients. Now that that's done, Luluo wobbled back to the Earth Dome while her whole body shivered. She assured Toot Toot that she would go back to lying down and resting to feel better. Something about her seemed odd to Toot Toot, but he can't quite put his finger on it. He asked himself what Luluo sees from her perspective. Perhaps if he had a brain, he would understand what she's thinking of better. Back in the CDMF, the floor that held most of the survivors looked like it was ransacked and destroyed by a storm, and it was messy. Fengkin and his little sister took some ventilator equipment just to err on the side of caution. They took the last 2 sets in the previous safe house. Based on experience, Feng Yuan knew that even with a weapon without much power, killing a single Darksider by itself should not be a problem. She gripped her trusty tightly. Meanwhile, Chengyin will take the way from outside the building. They devised a plan in which he would go first so the siblings could come in once they heard a huge commotion. It's the first time Feng Yuan saw Chengyin go on his Earth form. She hysterically laughed at the sight of his crappy color. But this is a serious matter. Chengyin wants to be clear that their goal this time is to get the medicine and get out. If the situation becomes dangerous, he has no obligation to take responsibility for the human lives inside. With a solemn gaze, he asserted that he was also a Darksider, and they better not try to use morality to coerce him into doing something at the last minute. Well, now the dangerous mission they're going on seems a lot more real. Fengqian assured Chengyin that they wouldn't have a problem as they would take responsibility for themselves. Then Chengyin will set off. First, it's his first time traveling through a ventilation duct, but it might be easier on account of his infinitely flexible form. He kneeled to press the ventilation duct cover, estimating how wide the opening was. Once he got the right size, he pushed his earth hand deeper into the grooves as his silty body permeated through the opening of the bars. He realized that going underground through a vent is very similar to traversing his homeland underground. So, moving as a piece of land is starting to feel more intuitive. Sneaking in the hose was not too difficult as well. The siblings that were left upstairs were debating whether they really wanted to go through with the plan with so much unknown with the situation at hand. Fengqian sternly scolded his sister to not get cold feet now and to follow the plan. She can be hesitant for just a moment, but as a brother, he can't afford to do so. Feng Yuan just clicked her tongue in frustration. As for Chengyin, he's quietly traversing the intricate vent system of the underground floor, trying his best to sneak past maybe hundreds of burning Darksiders below. Once he reached his spot, he quickly loosened up the vent cover, attracting the attention of the burning Darksiders on account of its noise. Chengyin made his brave surprise entrance from the broken vent and successfully infiltrated the Darksider party. He took down one unfortunate monster standing directly below his entrance point. The rest of the mindless Darksiders started marching toward him. Chengyin touched the ground and steadily injected his soil into the pavement. Once enough Darksiders entered his range, he detonated the soil while blasting water, effectively turning it into pressurized mud, blasting the monsters away. Those who were unfortunate enough to get close too soon had their internal flames extinguished in one go. Chengyin made the perfect initiation, but the number of Darksiders in this place is a bit too much. They might have bitten off more than they could chew. Once he was seen as a hostile force for killing off some of the Darksiders, the other burning men turned the aggro up to the highest level. Moreover, Chengyin's limited earth body is unable to absorb too much water at once. Using a fire extinguishing method as a primary way to deal with the burning Darksiders isn't too reliable, which led him to think of an absurd approach. What if he does the opposite and adds oil to the fire instead? I don't know how he switched the hose setting to spray oil, but we are going to roll with it. This change of approach proved to be highly effective, as the burning Darksiders could not handle a bigger flame. Chengyin had noticed this when he was burying Darksiders before. The majority of these monsters still possess a partial human body, so a proper raging fire would be impossible to handle. They might burn internally, but their external bodies are still susceptible to higher temperatures. Furthermore, once the oxygen level gets thinner, their survival instinct of breathing will also kick in. They might be monsters, but their human bodies still need air. Now that the mob has been taken care of, the only remaining real trouble is the big guy, who's not affected even in such a dire situation. The burning Darksider boss is the only one that still retains its ability to speak, but its vocabulary and intelligence are severely limited, but the emotions it holds are seemingly intensified. The big guy is angry that Chengyin is not being an obedient little Darksider, so punishment must be served. Just as the big guy was about to reach Chengyin to do some unspeakable things to him, a red car came crashing through the wall to deliberately crash against the Darksider boss. Once the big guy noticed what was happening, it was too late already. Its body was shattered into 1,000,000 pieces, and the car driven by Fengqian suffered some bumper damage. With the limited space, Fengqian had to maneuver expertly to avoid any further accidents. Chung-yin thought that asking these two to come in with a car as support was just for extra measure, and he did not expect it to be such an excellent finisher to a big problem. The vehicle looks expensive too. Feng Qin laughed awkwardly. He works at a private hospital after all. He can afford this kind of luxury from time to time. Boarding the car, Chung-yin explained the next leg of their plan. They need to go to the sealed area where the survivors are defending themselves. It's up to Feng Yuan to double-check the route they need to take to get there. Suddenly, Feng Qin's walkie-talkie started buzzing. Then, a commanding voice repeatedly called out to the doc, asking if he could hear the transmission as just now, the survivors heard a huge commotion outside. The voice continued saying that they needed help as fast as possible. The tone felt a little too demanding, though. But Feng Qin must have recognized the voice and immediately locked in. He replied that he would be coming right away. With the trio strapped in their seats, Feng Qin went ahead and pedaled to the metal in the winding halls of the underground bunker, slamming into burning dark-siders along the way. The people he mentioned previously, who did not manage to escape in time, are defending their position at this level. But Chung-yin noticed that there were so few dark-siders in the area that it was possible that the survivors had left already. Feng Qin was certain that that should not be the case, as there are still people who have not escaped yet. It did not take too long for the group to arrive at the bunker entrance. The odd thing was that the gate was slightly ajar. Why would the secured gate defended by survivors be opened for the dark-siders to invade? Feng Qin must have been frazzled by the unusual sight to the point of speeding out of the car to take a look inside. The group entered the secured bunker, and they were greeted by an unnerving silence and destruction. In the middle of the mess was a person, seemingly injured, as he sat near the supply boxes. The man was already in the process of turning into a dark-sider. The transformation had started on his foot, and it was quickly climbing up to the rest of his body. He felt an unbearable burning sensation. Still, the siblings still came up to the suspicious survivor to check if he was all right and to ask where the others went. The man just kept on repeating the word burned over and over again. As he recalls what happened to the rest of the survivors, the transformation must have sped up. Before the internal flame completely consumed his system, his last wish was to not turn into one of those mindless monsters. Li Chengyin quickly grabbed the siblings by their shoulders and jumped back into safety as he sensed the fiery transformation entering its final phase. The man's whole body was swallowed by the flames, igniting his skin and turning him into a full-blown burning dark-sider. At this point, he still held on to the little bit of consciousness he could grasp and pleaded for the group to extinguish the fire. Feng Yuan had already seen something like this happen when Qinwen turned into the hook-shot dark-sider. So was Chung-yin. But he won't make the same mistake again. This time, he won't even listen to the nonsensical drivel of a dark-sider. Using his earth body, he stirred up a sandstorm that swallowed the man whole. It swiftly extinguished the burgeoning fire. The poor guy is laid on the cold ground, weighted down by a sentient patch of soil as his life slowly gets snuffed out. This attack confirmed another one of Chung-yin's theories. He felt it when he was dealing with the burning dark-siders earlier. It seems like they use themselves as fuel to coexist with the flames. This kind of mutation is quite troublesome indeed. Chung-yin stretched out his hand to check on the dark-sider's vitals. The monster grabbed his stretched-out hand instead. It gripped him with desperation. Mr. Darksider kept on insisting that he didn't want to join the others. He did not want to join the others. As the light of flame on his eye socket dimmed, the last bit of life drifted away. His last words were a poignant thanks to Chung-yin for not letting him live on as a mindless beast. Feng Yuan carefully approached Chung-yin and asked what happened. He somberly answered that the man burned out. He turned to Liu Fengqin to ask what was going on and where the resources that he had mentioned were. Even if there are no survivors in this bunker, shouldn't there be burned supplies lying around? Feng Qin was just as confused as Chung-yin. His auntie clearly contacted him through the walkie-talkie just now. She was the one desperately requesting urgent support. Chung-yin doesn't like being in the dark when he's putting his life on the line. Feng Qin mentioned some auntie, but he wasn't clued in with that auntie business. Feng Yuan explained that their auntie adopted the two of them when they were kids. She was also here in the CDMF when the eclipse started. Feng Qin used the walkie-talkie to contact her once again. It looks like he managed to go through and hurriedly asked where their auntie was. Through the static audio quality, Auntie asked if the team was making a commotion. She explained that someone among the survivors mutated, so they had to take the resources and escape somewhere else. As for where they went, all the group had to do was follow the underground road. At the end of it, there should be a bunch of cars gathered around, and the remaining survivors are supposedly hiding there. She insisted that they hadn't been spotted by the Darksiders yet, but they needed help. Feng Qin did not hesitate to reply that they were coming over as fast as they could. He turned around and heaved a sigh of relief, knowing that their auntie was all right. Now, all they need to do is follow her directions. Before Feng Qin could sit back in the driver's seat, Chung-yin grabbed him by the shoulders and told the doctor to wait up. Chung-yin is quite familiar with the facility's layout after memorizing the vent system. The place that Auntie mentioned is a dead end based on the map. There aren't any gaps for him to drill into to escape in case anything bad happens. Moreover, her voice is too calm for someone hiding in fear for her life. Fengqian asserted that this has always been his auntie's style. She's the type of woman who stays calm and unruffled while doing her utmost to plan out every step of the way. Back when his and Feng Yuan's parents died, Auntie raised and treated the siblings as if they were her own children. Without her, the doc wouldn't have had a successful life that everyone envies. Hearing that made Feng Yuan clench her teeth for some reason. Chengyin turned to her to ask what she made of this situation before they made any more moves. First of all, the lady pinched his cheek for calling her by her first name so casually when they were not even that close. Well, she could pinch all she wants. Mud and soil don't feel pain anyway. She took off the ventilator equipment and took a deep breath. She reckons that no matter what's happening, Auntie and the others take the resources with them. So, they have no choice but to go. Auntie's voice and logic seem to be the same as before. She thinks it should not be something like the Qinwen situation from before. Chengyin sees the point of her input and agrees that there is no other way. So, the trio went deeper into the underground building, into the place where the auntie of the siblings directed them to pull up. Fengqian was about to start yelling for his auntie to come out, but Chengyin stopped him. They need to get closer and observe first before doing anything stupid. Feng Yuan scanned the perimeter and confirmed that his place could indeed hide quite a lot of people. There's also no lingering smell or traces of Darksiders nearby. Surprised, Chengyin asked her when she had been able to detect the smell and trace of Darksiders. Well, she doesn't know exactly as well. She thinks it's just some kind of innate intuition or something along those lines. Their careful observation walk was interrupted by Fengqian stopping as if he had just seen something in the front. Behind one of the cars was a familiar sight. Fengqian immediately perked up in excitement as he ran toward the car and asked if the person hiding behind was their aunt. She turned towards the group and smiled at the sight of Fengqian. The doc turned to the skeptical Chengyin and his sister to gloat that he knew their auntie would be fine and wouldn't harm them. But the woman rose up to her feet in the evilest way possible. Chengyin tried to scream at Liu Fengqian to run back as fast as he could. But the doc did not listen. He turned his attention to his beloved auntie instead. What he saw made his eyes widen in shock and fear. Half of her face has already been taken over by the dark element, forming a Darksider mask. She smiled and welcomed Fengqian and Feng Yuan home now that they were back at her side. Fengqian's brain must have short-circuited at the awful sight of the woman who raised them. Auntie kept on insisting that this was still her and that she was glad that he found Feng Yuan for her. Calling the hundreds of burning Darksider hiding all over the place out, Auntie can finally put her heart at ease. Chengyin immediately ejected something out of his body through his palm. Once the handlebars were out, he pulled out his signature weapon, the gigantic garden shears he used against the hook-shot Darksider before. He instructed the siblings to retreat as fast as they could, making them face the reality that their auntie had officially turned into a Darksider. The garden shears in his hand were quickly enveloped by winding soil and roots, strengthening and incorporating the oversized scissors into his own body. His initial slash was easily thwarted by two burning Darksiders that used metal pipes to deflect his sudden attack, protecting their master. Auntie smiled and asked where this unknown Earthbrat came from. Then it clicked. She reckoned that Chengyin must be one of Feng Yuan's degenerate companions. Auntie started ranting about how she kept on telling Feng Yuan to stay home and study well, to not go out all day and mess around, but the girl never listened to her words. That frustration in failing to keep Feng Yuan under her control spurred Auntie's complete burning transformation. She conjured and threw a blazing fireball toward Chengyin while yelling at him to scream and get lost. With how close he was, our boy was not able to dodge the massive fireball coming out from point-blank range. It ultimately knocked the garden shears out of his hands. Thankfully, Li Chengyin managed to regain his footing and landed on his feet. He might be made up of earth, but the fire still cracked his skin. If someone like him can be set ablaze, then who knows how many people she turned to Darksiders with her power. That person they came across in the first room must have been burned by her too. Auntie did not entertain his questions with answers. She just told Chengyin to scramble and sent her army of burning Darksiders to overwhelm him. Combined with the constant burn, the overwhelming attacks coming from multiple angles were just too difficult to dodge or counter. It shattered Chengyin's body into 1,000 little pieces. After being burned by the auntie's flame, his soil must have lost its viscosity. It was as if his muscles were burning with fatigue, and he couldn't gather an ounce of strength no matter how hard he tried. His head was the only thing remaining intact, and it was still burning relentlessly. This is bad. At this rate, he'll probably die in this place. Auntie thinks that the pesky brat has been taken care of, her horde of mindless monsters echoing her every word. Removing half of her Darksider mask as the flames around her dissipated, she called Feng Qin, inviting him to sit down first so they could talk properly. Chengyin was surprised. He had never seen a Darksider seemingly so in control of their form. In the middle of the car parking area, Auntie ordered her army to take out some chairs so she and her nephew could catch up. She opened up by saying that she understands how tough their journey must have been returning home, so they should come and have a sip of some totally unsuspicious bottled water first. The hollow voices of the Darksiders all around them did not make this offer appealing. Still, it's not like the siblings have any other choice. The doc was the first one to agree and took the bottled water hesitantly. Using his eyes, he signaled to his sister that this drink was part of those resources. Those supplies should be nearby, hidden by their auntie, which means the antibiotics are somewhere in the area. Feng Yuan was still trying to make sense of their current predicament. Just a few minutes ago, their auntie was going crazy against Cheng Yin, but now she's acting as if everything's peaceful again. And why is she even sitting with a Darksider face to face so peacefully? She's as helpless as she has always been. Auntie must have sensed their uncertainty and asked why they were so nervous. She reckons that the siblings must have been frightened by the situation outside. Then she started lecturing them not to run around anymore, as staying home is the best. The siblings tried to play along and awkwardly laughed while agreeing with their crazy aunt. Being surrounded by hundreds of burning Darksiders, wouldn't it be weirder if they weren't on edge? Auntie advised them that the more abnormal a situation is, the more they should listen to her. That's because when their parents entrusted the two to her, she swore that she would take good care of the siblings. Auntie doesn't want to let them down. Feng Yuan clenched his fist and gritted her teeth. Even without the Darksider mask, she's already heard this lecture from their auntie more times than she could count. As she looked down in anger, she spotted something that might help them out. Little pieces of soil started gathering in her sleeves. It eventually formed a text telling her to look to her right. She saw Cheng Yin's head twisting and looking at her. He warned her that their auntie is the same as Qin Wen, a Darksider with a lingering strong attachment still left in her. The loose soil shifted and changed to another message. Since Feng Yuan is a familiar face to her aunt, she needs to find a chance to escape at all costs. She scoffed at Cheng Yin's message. Calling her aunt a relative or family sounds funny to her. Auntie must have sensed her contempt and lunged at Feng Yuan to ask where she was looking instead of listening to her talk. She looked down at her niece. In her mind, she was just trying to correct her bad habits, and Feng Yuan kept on showing a bad attitude. Auntie told Feng Yuan to look at her brother, a man who is living comfortably after getting a job with a high salary and prestige, an amazing success. Then there's Feng Yuan, a troublemaker who changed her course to study at some unknown agricultural school without telling her aunt. Just now, Auntie must have spotted Feng Yuan looking at Cheng Yin's severed head, and it made him extremely nervous. Auntie consciously ordered the Darksiders to pick the thing up, and he started sweating. She took his head to her hand and observed it for a second. In her perspective, it was just a sphere made of soil. Cheng Yin was a little irked, but at least he's not getting crushed. Auntie threw the sphere of soil away and continued berating Feng Yuan for thinking of running amok around the world, telling her to be more like her brother and just devote herself to studying. She grabbed the young lady by the wrist and pulled her up. Auntie asserted that she was not trying to harm her. Auntie was just doing this for the good of her niece. Gripping Feng Yuan by both hands, Auntie refused to let go. The Darksider mask started spreading to her whole face. Her hands began igniting and burning Feng Yuan's sleeves. This time, Auntie demands that she listens. In this new world, she wants to bring the siblings in so they can establish a whole new blissful family. Yes, a new family of mindless burning Darksiders under Auntie's complete control. Her ultimate dream. Feng Yuan remembers being a curious little girl, happily playing outside, using mud to satisfy her artistic mind, and her auntie yelling at her to go back home and study. Every time she entered the house after school, Auntie would be there to hound her about homework. She even signs her niece up to different lectures every weekend. Even when Feng Yuan tries to venture out to try new things like hiking, Auntie's voice of disapproval will haunt her everywhere she goes. She thinks hiking is something that unemployed bums do. Auntie always tells the siblings that she is not trying to harm them, that everything she does is for their own good. But that suffocating control over their lives stops now. Liu Feng Yuan's body erupted with purple flames. On the sidelines, Cheng Yin kept his eyes on the commotion. If he wasn't mistaken, Feng Yuan was actually emitting the power of the dark element. A Darksider mask started taking over her face as she recalled all the times that Auntie told her that blind obedience is for her own good. When she was growing up, this woman never even asked her if she ever needed anything. As her emotions exploded, so did the dark element she was radiating. No matter how brazen Auntie was, she did not dare approach Feng Yuan while she was undergoing a full-on Darksider transformation. She just watched from the sidelines intently. Then, she realized that this was a good thing and excitedly pulled her by the shoulders. She thinks that this is proof that Feng Yuan is accepting her invitation to make a new family. Auntie gently caressed her face, and the Darksider mask started spreading a lot faster. Cheng Yin finally broke away from his soil sphere roleplay and opened his mouth. He screamed at Liu Feng Yuan, hoping that she would wake up before the dark element consumed her. His voice must have reached her subconscious as the quick spread of dark elements faltered. Lai Chengyin called back the loose soil to recreate his body while telling Feng Yuan that what he wanted to save wasn't just Luluo back home. He also wanted to save his previous feelings of existing as a human being. If he had not had that going for him, he would not have left that big piece of land and risked his life by coming all the way here. In his mind, by living together with a group of normal humans, he will be able to remember that he still has some humanity left inside him. For that exact reason, he will not allow Feng Yuan to become nothing but a walking corpse like those other Darksiders. Even with his body cracking down, suboptimal and incomplete, Chengyin charged forward to strike down Auntie. But all she had to do was nonchalantly raise her hand to his face and make him eat a point-blank flamethrower, burning his already ruined body down even further. With the last bit of strength he still had, Chengyin tried to remind Liu Fengyuan who she was as he shattered into a million pieces. She must not forget that she is a strong human, first and foremost. The sound of Chengyin's body turning into nothing but pebbles hitting the ground must have sobered Feng Yuan up. The Darksider mask on her face started pulling back as she emotionally looked at someone she would consider a true friend. Feng Qin was at a loss for words. The doc meekly turned to his auntie like a lost child. Auntie turned to Feng Yuan once again, saying that although the world has undergone unprecedented changes recently, human laws are still the same. She believes that to be an excellent individual in your chosen field is the ultimate truth of life. Auntie's path is to become someone who is admired, respected, and even worshipped. She strives to become everyone's leader, a model of influence for everyone. So she ignited Feng Yuan's legs until they crumbled into ashes just to stop her from running anymore. She lit her arms up until they were burned down so Feng Yuan would stop reaching for what she wanted and to prevent her from rebelling. Then, the burning Darksider horde took their grubby hands and dragged Feng Yuan away by the auntie's orders. They literally and figuratively tried gagging and dragging her away from her own aspirations. Feng Yuan passed out and found herself opening her eyes in the middle of nothingness. She was in an endless free fall, not knowing whether there was a ground at the end of her descent. It was just a dark and miserable emptiness, a gaping hole that would put her in an endless fall into the void. She heard Auntie's whispers telling her that she would be able to obtain the glory that rightfully belonged to her. The army of burning Darksiders mindlessly concurred, echoing the words and feelings of their boss. Auntie started clapping, and so did her army. She assured Feng Yuan that all she had to do was believe in her aunt and that all would be all right. In her continuous fall, Feng Yuan was starting to feel that maybe her aunt was right. Perhaps she was onto something. If she wasn't right, then Feng Yuan's brother would not have become such an excellent individual in everyone's eyes, right? Logically speaking, if she can also walk on the path that her auntie arranged specifically for her, then it would be unlikely for it to go wrong. However, Liu Fengyuan knows that the way she sees things is also correct. That realization broke her free from the endless descent into a gaping hole filled with nothingness. She wants to run in the forests, to soar in the skies whenever she wants. She wants to be uninhibited and free. During this brief moment at the end of her simple life, she realized what she wanted all along. The stumps on either side of her torso where her auntie burned her arms off spawned a tiny whirlwind full of life. In her severed and charred leg, the same lively whirlwind showed up. She broke free from the grubby grasp of the Darksiders and floated up in the air. She felt unshackled from her burdens as she finally understood the principle of her life. If there isn't any room for discussion between right and wrong, then right and wrong themselves are meaningless. Feng Yuan stood tall. Her whirlwinds dissipated as she floated in the air with renewed arms and legs. Her head was clear of doubts. Only the outcome will decide everything. On the floor, loose pebbles started silently gathering together once again. Chengyin assimilated enough pieces to form an eye and saw Liu Fengyuan mutate into the manifestation of wind as a Darksider. Auntie glared at her for disobeying her orders once again. If there's one thing Auntie hates, it's disobedient dolls. So, she instructed her army to shut her niece's mouth up and make her stop talking nonsense. Fengyuan remained calm. In her mind, concepts of Darksiders, dark elements, the power of mutation, everything is starting to make sense now. Her understanding was growing at an exponential rate. Extending her newly regenerated arm, she started conjuring a tiny whirlwind up. Then, using that tiny gust of wind, she pressed down with her hand, which caused a downburst of pressurized draft. It made all the burning Darksiders chasing after her fall down to the ground forcefully. As the useless army flails all around the room, Auntie could not believe her eyes. However, the new and improved Liu Fengyuan has not yet been implemented. After the downburst of air came the updraft. She conjured a massive cyclone in the enclosed space, making the burning Darksiders helplessly spin around the swirl. Even Chengyin, or at least what's left of him, was implicated in the cyclone. Inside, he noticed that the dark elements were gathering together at an alarming rate. Surprisingly, after his body swirled into the wind, That weak feeling that he had after being burned by the flames disappeared, allowing him to properly rebuild his whole body from scratch. Once his regenerated earth body was gently laid on the ground, he immediately ran up to Lu Fengyuan to ask if she retained her rationality. She flashed that signature smug smile under her Darksider mask and commented that she could finally see Chungyin's human form clearly. She added that he looked even more cowardly compared to the blurry image that she could see before. Chungyin smirked as his own Darksider mask slowly spread through his face. He knew that a normal Darksider would never be able to imitate Feng Yuan's smug personality like that, so now he felt relieved that she maintained her humanity. As for Auntie, she is far from relieved. Her army of slaves was neutralized in one go. How could she feel relieved? To combat that feeling of defeat, she turned on the jets and went into her Darksider form while genuinely thinking that she was doing all this to prevent her niece from becoming like the depraved Chungyin. With the duo reunited with newfound strength stronger than ever before, Chungyin dispersed his earth body to the air as he asked for Feng Yuan's assistance while he contained the flames. Using his whole body as a massive shield, blocking Auntie's tantrum flames was not that difficult. Then, he opened up some apertures on the shield that Feng Yuan could use to unleash a windburst counterattack safely. The aperture holes from the earth shield plus the windburst were a perfect combination of skills. It was powerful enough to push back Auntie's wrathful fire. Inside her flaming prison, Auntie was blown away by the intense windburst. The air intensified the flames coming from inside her body, lighting up her external frame and letting her feel the burn that her victims must have suffered. Chungyin's hypothesis was true indeed. This kind of fire mutant uses its own body as fuel. No wonder her mutation trait was the one that was restrained the most just now. No matter how awful her auntie was, Feng Yuan still felt for her and didn't want to inflict unnecessary pain. All she wanted was to end the suffering that this disaster also brought to her. Chungyin agreed. This is a family matter, after all. As for the method to completely exterminate a Darksider, he had already taught her that before. He raised his fist and bumped it against Feng Yuan's. Two Darksiders that somehow retained their humanity have teamed up with each other. Using both their superpowered punch, they aimed for Auntie's face. The combined attack quickly and brutally shattered Auntie's Darksider mask, ending her reign of terror altogether. The dual punch sent Auntie crashing down to the concrete ground. She shivered in pain while asking why Feng Yuan couldn't seem to understand that she was just doing everything for Feng Yuan's own good. Auntie shakily turned her attention to Feng Qian. She wanted to at least know that he could understand everything she had ever done for him, since Auntie considers Feng Qian her masterpiece. While crawling towards the dock, she asserted that she was the one who gave him a perfect life. Feng Qian's success is proof that she had always been right. Now all she wants is for Feng Qian to come back to Auntie as a family, and all will be all right. The doc hesitated for a moment. It appears as though he was actually considering abiding by her auntie's words. Feng Yuan immediately warned her brother to not listen to that Darksider on the ground, as that is not their auntie anymore. That monster is just harping about her prejudice and supremacy before she dies. The miserable figure crawling on the ground is just a Darksider who does not possess any empathy towards humans. While Feng Yuan was ranting about their auntie being an apathetic Darksider, it did not help that she also looked like a monster. So Feng Qian turned to his sister and questioned what made her different from their auntie. That includes Li Chungyin too. His sister and her friend's appearance doesn't seem that different compared to the one they're calling a monster. That certainly gagged Feng Yuan. She did not know how to respond as his words were logical. In agony, Doc's tears started falling. It's definitely true that Auntie has been taking care of them for the past 20 years. He owes her so much that it pains him to even think about abandoning her. As a loving nephew and a medical practitioner, isn't it against his conscience and code to let her die in this miserable place? Feng Yuan called it how she saw it and told the doc that he was stupid. Fortunately, Chungyin held her back before she started berating her brother even harder. As far as Chungyin remembers, Auntie is a woman fully capable of transforming Feng Yuan, Feng Qian, and other people into low-tier Darksiders. He has seen the site of mutation. There's definitely a dark element involved in that process. So, why didn't Auntie just turn Feng Qian now? It's impossible that she doesn't want to, so it must be because she can't. Could it be because Feng Yuan and Feng Qian were first exposed to and infected by Chungyin's innate dark element? Auntie can transform ordinary people exposed to her dark element into Darksiders. Can Chungyin do the same? Auntie's pathetic crawl got her close enough to hold on to Doc's feet. She felt grateful that he could still be persuaded, at the very least. But Chungyin spoiled her hope by telling Liu Fengqin that he's not that type of person. With his human form, he told Doc that the real Fengqin is not someone who just obediently listens to others. Doc was seemingly enthralled by Chungyin's words and wanted to hear more. Chungyin pointed to that expensive car with a messed up bumper and insisted that this car had exposed the real Liu Fengqin. His model choice, the way he drove, and the decisiveness to ram into one darksider after another point to one thing. They don't correspond with the graceful temperament of a successful white-collar worker content with his mundane life. All those factors point to Fengqian's unconscious desire to break free from the cage of life as well. Well, Chengyin thinks that it's about time for the doc to do just that. Unbeknownst to Fengqian, Chengyin's voice and gestures contained dark elements that resonated with the specs he had already been exposed to since they had met earlier. The doc promptly removed his jacket. He draped it over his auntie's continuously weakening body. With no sympathy left in his eyes, he coldly warned his auntie that if she continued to burn, she would be destroyed. So, his final advice for auntie is to take care of herself. Puzzled by her nephew's heartless words, she refuses to believe what she is hearing. The doc stood up and looked around. They needed some resources and medical supplies, and finding them wouldn't be a problem, as he had already spotted them hiding in a nearby car. Fengqian swore that they wouldn't be taking everything, as auntie would probably need a fuel source aside from her own body to continue living. Doc just walked away from auntie's miserable grasp, severing their toxic ties once and for all. Before going, he promised to come and visit her again, but it sounded more of a threat than a good thing. He also told her not to worry, as he would take good care of Feng Yuan as a big brother. No matter how pathetically auntie tried to catch up, she was just too far gone to do so. And so, the trio got out of CDMF with plenty of essential supplies. With the doc on the wheel, any burning darksider they saw flew into the air. Something changed within the previously indecisive doctor. He seemed more resolute under Chengyin's dark element influence. Meanwhile, Feng Yuan and Chengyin chose to tail the car from behind. Maybe they're practicing their movement. She's not worried about her auntie anymore, as her attribute will forever be able to restrain her. But she's concerned about her brother and asked if Chengyin did anything to him. Chengyin confessed that he tried to imitate the method used by their auntie to ignite other people. He did not expect that the prejudice he passed on to the doc would override emotions. He knew that forcing his thoughts onto other people was not a good thing. If the doc doesn't forgive him in the future, Chengyin will gladly take responsibility for it. But Chengyin and everybody else can't afford to care about that right now. Their only priority is to deliver the medicine to Lu Luo quickly and on time. Thankfully, it looks like they succeeded in that regard. Not only did Lu Luo get the meds in time, but they also even got Liu Fengqin to personally check and monitor her condition. Upon checking, the doc assessed that Lu Luo's physical health had improved. She should be able to recover even faster after taking the antibiotics. Even in the worst-case scenario, she still has a very high chance of surviving. For some reason, Chengyin remembered the day Lu Luo told him that there was a strong sense of security in his land. He told Fengqian that they couldn't afford to make her take even the slightest bit of risk. None at all. While he was having a moment, Feng Yuan barged into the Earth Dome to call Li Chengyin to quickly come out and take a look at something. She led him to the woods in an urgent hurry. What they saw were withered roots scattered all over the ground and a wilted flower situated in the middle of a barren land. It was Toot Toot. That charming flower that's been with him since day one has mysteriously wasted away. Chengyin anxiously approached his friend, confused as to what or who would put Toot Toot in such a state. Toot Toot weakly spoke up, telling Li Chengyin to stop making a fuss. He insisted that no one had caused this. What had happened was just the result of the laws of nature rearing its ugly head. Chengyin became even more frantic. He thinks it's because he used too many dark elements from afar, causing the flower to wane. He would gladly bring nutrients and the remaining dark element over immediately to let Toot Toot eat as much as he wants if that could help. But it's already too late. The sun is already setting for Toot Toot's life. Everyone is powerless in the face of death. Toot Toot has already accepted that the end is a part of this endless cycle of life. To be able to think so deeply as a simple plant was such a magical experience for him. As the flower began to wither and crack away, he turned to Li Chengyin and made one final request. Toot Toot implored Chengyin to remember to repay him in the next life for the debt he owed. Lu Luo slowly opened her tired eyes after being bedridden for the past few days. She sat up and did some stretches, as one would after staying in bed for extended periods of time. The young lady got out of the Earth Dome and saw the siblings, Feng Yuan and Feng Qin. With a big cheerful smile appropriate for the bright and sunny day, Lu Luo greeted everyone with a good morning. Liu Feng Yuan is still a little worried about her friend and asks Lu Luo how she's feeling. The young lady confidently stood proud and declared that her falling sick was just a freak accident. And now, her body is really healthy. Now that she's looking at it, Feng Yuan is the one that does not look too good. She closed in on the pink-haired lady and asked if she was stressed over her. Feng Yuan backed off with some nervous and awkward laughter while insisting that she was okay. In reality, she's just being cautious as she's still not used to using the dark element to recover. Lu Luo curiously turned her attention to the side and laid eyes on a stranger. Not a complete stranger, though. She had already seen photos of Feng Qin before, so she knew that the doc was Feng Yuan's older brother. Likewise, Feng Yuan had mentioned Lu Luo to her brother before. Anyways, the person Lu Luo was actually looking for is that Earth guy, Li Chengyin. She was expecting to see him when she opened her eyes. Well, our boy is sitting near a cliff, wallowing in tranquil silence while staring at the sea of trees below. He repeatedly chanted a bizarre mantra about how he was a piece of land and that the cycle of life was inevitable. He is human. He can't remain unperturbed in the face of death. But his belief in this mantra is quickly waning. Should he continue to insist on the path of humans? Should he hold on to morals and beliefs that he had before, or will accepting the reality that he is now a piece of land make things easier? Before coming up with an answer of his own, Lu Luo snuck up behind him to give Chengyin a surprise cold water bath as a good morning gift. When he turned around, he was confused at first, but felt relieved upon realizing that it was Lu Luo. The young lady's lips curled up to a genuine smile, and she insisted that since Chengyin looked a bit shriveled today, she thought he could use some water replenishment. Chengyin just thanked her. His gaze softened as soon as it met Lu Luo's eyes. She walked a little closer and asked if Chengyin was hiding on this cliff with Toot Toot away from everyone else. She did not expect that the land and the flower would grow so close. Chengyin almost told Lu Luo the devastating news of Toot Toot's death, but he checked himself. He hesitated whether to tell her or not. Thinking about it, Toot Toot has also grown close with Lu Luo. You might even say that the sentient flower was her pet for some time. All Chengyin could say was that he really let Lu Luo down big time this time. She pulled back, feeling a little confused as to what he was trying to say. Anyway, she's planning to get back in the groove of things and work on the farm today. For that, she needs to borrow Toot Toot's capabilities first. Li Chengyin tried to tell her straight up that calling on Toot Toot to assist was not possible anymore. But before he could break the news properly, 3 flowers suddenly appeared at the edge of the cliff. The 3-headed flower started ragging on Li Chengyin like the old times, calling him a deadbeat and whatnot. When he turned around, he jumped in fright as if he just saw a ghost. Well, technically, it really is like seeing a ghost, considering the fact that he saw Toot Toot not too long ago. Toot Toot admonished him for screaming like a little girl when the sassy flower was alive and well. Toot Toot already told him about the cycle of life, and he intends to cash in on the debt that Chengyin still owes him. Lu Luo squatted down and started stroking Toot Toot. The flower's mutation seems a lot more profound now. It's even harder to tell whether he's a variant of soybean or potato. With her assistant successfully secured, Lu Luo felt energized to roll up her sleeves and get to work to make up for all the lost days. Well, Toot Toot's not too enthusiastic about the prospect of working. Before all that, Chengyin wanted to know what exactly was going on with this bizarre flower. Not only did he not die after withering away, but he also looks and acts even more human-like now. Toot Toot seriously pondered what he went through leading up to his death. For some reason, the memory of the sick Lu Luo coming up to him and watering him with green and viscous nutrient fluid. For some reason, Toot Toot chose not to reveal what was on his mind, taking a wait-and-see attitude for what really happened. Rather than thinking about this, the 3-headed flower advised that Chengyin should go take care of his new friend first. With a puzzled expression, Chengyin turned around and looked for this so-called new friend that the flower was talking about. He might have been looking too high up, as the new friend can be seen crackling and drilling out of the soil. It looked like some kind of radish with a face. The radish looked like he had glasses and was meekly mumbling to himself. He was saying that it would have been great if he had noticed the signs earlier. It would have been great if he had just resolved the conflicts between everyone. At this point, a crop talking fluently is not enough to impress or shock Chengyin. But there's something different about this little guy. Mr. Radish is thinking different thoughts compared to the rest of the forest plants. One can clearly hear Mr. Radish mumbling to himself like a human. So, Chengyin decided to inspect the little guy a little closer, so he slowly reached his hand out. Before he could touch the mumbling radish, a wild vine interjected and whipped his hand away while it screamed the phrase, "Save people." Chengyin was a little surprised, but he was also starting to make sense of the situation now. This wild vine fella keeps on insisting that he's the only one who can save everyone and that he must do so using his brandishing claw. That's an awfully familiar sentiment, right? Also, the voice is oddly recognizable to Chengyin, but what he's thinking should not be possible. While lost in thought, Liu Fengyuan entered the scene to ask what happened after seeing Toot Toot walking with Lu Luo when the flower withered and died the day before. Noticing that Chengyin must be dealing with an even more bizarre situation, Fengyuan decided to snoop a little closer. She saw the 2 bizarre plants sticking out of the ground and was unsettled, to say the least. The radish kept on blaming himself while the wild vine kept on repeating that he must save people. Fengyuan immediately recognized the little plants as Qinwen and Chengjun, the guys who tagged along in her insane Lu Luo rescue mission. Chengyin asked her how she determined that it was her 2 friends so quickly and assuredly. She can't quite explain it in detail either. Her subconscious just seems to think that these are her friends. Feng Yuan observed that the wills of Cheng Jun and Qin Wen were somehow inserted inside some crops to make sentient plants. There is also an intriguing connection that's seemingly transmitting directly to her. Knowing this, it feels like they can actually arrange these little guys in a place where they can be used as sentries or guards against enemies. If there are plants versus zombies, maybe they can do mutants versus darksiders. Cheng Yin is not opposed to that idea. The land was originally the home for all creatures, and it can also serve as the breeding ground for new lives. Cheng Jun and Qin Wen might no longer be in this world physically, but their obsessions, wills, and the life form in the soil have mutated into one entity. As long as the eclipse is still shining down, the abnormal mutations will not stop. Rather than being confused by his own identity, Cheng Yin realized that he should be placing more importance on the research about the uses of the dark element. In the first days of the apocalypse, he used to think that he was the one and only exceptional existence chosen to be something more than just a mindless beast, a clear-headed human among monsters. But looking at Qin Wen and Liu Fengyuan's case would prove that Cheng Yin is not some kind of heaven-chosen messiah. There is a high probability that there must be darksiders that hold even more power, prejudice, and cunning than they had ever encountered before. The bottom line is that there will be a darksider that's even better than Cheng Yin at utilizing the power of the mysterious dark element. If he is put in a position to face even scarier monsters in the future, who knows what will happen? Who knows if he'll survive? Speaking of scarier monsters, it seems like a new face just pulled up to the mountain. With a lacy parasol in hand, a white-haired lady sported a slight smile as she confidently strutted in the middle of the woods. Will Li Chengyin be able to protect everything that he has right now?